On today's program, the Headless Nun of Miramichi. She still haunts the town where she met her doom.
And from there we meet the ghost of Burlington Bay Harbor in Ontario, whose agonizing cries can be heard echoing across the water.
Then Creepy goes to Kentucky, where we'll meet the ghosts of the ruins of the Waverly Sanitarium, where thousands died of tuberculosis.
The deserted hulk of what was once the Waverly Hills Sanitarium in Louisville, Kentucky, stands like a decayed fortress, stripped of its powers to heal the sick. Its ruins are a magnet for would-be ghost hunters who hope to catch a glimpse of the spirits believed to be lingering there.
I've heard a lot of rumors about Waverly since I was in 10th grade, so my girlfriends and I, we had to go check it out. The place itself looks something out of a horror movie. We decided to go in, and we walked up and down the hallways and looked through some rooms.
The building is a maze of rooms and hallways, spreading over several acres, ravaged by time and vandals. But evidence of its former use still exists. The scratch marks on the basement walls suggest it was a place of confinement.
On one of the floors, one of the rooms, there looked like something like bloodstains.
Blood.
And then we heard like someone was walking up around the floor upstairs.
We need to go, guys. We need to go. Let's go. We need to go.
We tried to find a way out, but the door we went into another hallway. We kept walking, looking for another way out, and it seemed like someone was following us. We heard footsteps. We turned around, and there was definitely no one there.
I don't like this. We need to go. Come here, guys. We gotta go. We gotta go.
We looked around and searched harder and finally found a way out. When we got outside, I decided to take a picture just to prove we were there and show all of our friends.
Take a picture, okay?
I first saw her through the lens of my camera. She was standing on the 3rd floor, 10 years old, a little girl standing on the 3rd floor staring directly at us. I pointed her out to my friend. We looked at each other, amazed. What was a little girl doing out here? We knew something was definitely wrong with this picture, and so we took off.
The ghostly girl in the window has been seen by many people over the decades, but nobody knows who she was. Was she the child of a staff member or of a TB patient? Or was she, herself, a patient who perished here?
In 1910, the Waverly Hills Hospital, a wooden 2-story building with 40 beds, opened on one of the highest hills in South Jefferson County. It was built to contain the ravaging disease of tuberculosis. At that time, Louisville, Kentucky had the highest tuberculosis death rate in the country, probably due to the fact that the town was built on low-lying swampland where the TB bacteria could breed easily.
This is the second visit here by paranormal investigators Keith Age and his team from Louisville Ghost Hunting Society. They go directly to the 5th floor, where, on their first trip, they had sensed great anguish and suffering.
Room 502 is probably the most notorious room in Waverly. It's supposed to have been held for satanic rites. Also, what we do know is one of the head nurses here did hang herself in this room for different reasons. Another one supposedly jumped off the balcony from the other side. Now, why they did this, we don't know. Now, what we have had happen to us the first time we came in here in 2001, we walked into this room and we walked into basically a hot spot. It went from 86 degrees to 96 degrees within about 3 seconds. We had to get out because it was getting hotter and hotter. This is one of the rooms where we've had actually an EMF meter basically disintegrate in our hands. We sent it back to the manufacturer, and he's like, whatever you got, you just walked into so much power, he just couldn't handle it. You guys ready?
Tonight they will see if they can isolate and identify the ghostly activity reported here.
What do we got back there? When we first walked in, my EMF meter with a brand new meter battery decided just to quit. And as we're in here, it decided to start working again. So we're having a few malfunctions, which usually is inducive to paranormal activity. So we're gonna see if we can get any more as we go around the building, see what else we can find. Where are you headed? We're heading down to the 4th floor. We've had a lot of interesting things that have happened. Hopefully we'll capture.
Paranormal investigators from Louisville Ghost Hunting Society have come to the Waverly Hills Sanitarium to record the spirit presence of the many people who suffered and died here.
You look down there on the screen, you can see them all moving around. See them? See them all there in the corner? There's a whole bunch of them moving around right over there.
What do those represent?
It's just that manifestation of the energy. It's the way they manifest their energy. You can see quite a few moving down here right now. So we've got some activity right down here down the hall.
This is the place where every kid in Louisville, Kentucky comes to be scared or take your girlfriend or whatever, and everybody claims to have been broken into Waverly. The first year we were up here, we heard just blood-curdling screams and pounding coming from this floor. The guards and the owners and what Louisville ghost hunters were here, we all ran up, and there were these 3 teenage boys right here, standing here. We got here, we noticed one of them had an axe. What was really cool was, they're going, we couldn't get out, it wouldn't leave us alone. No matter where we turned, it wouldn't leave us. Now, at that point, that's when we looked at the door. Well, this is a big solid steel door. And if you look right here, they were pounding on this door with his axe. Only problem was, there's no lock holding this door. If they'd have hit it, the door would have swung, and it wouldn't have given you these clean cuts. If it had been leaned up against the wall, it would have bounced and still wouldn't have given you the clean cuts. So whatever it was that these boys were scared of, it was enough to where this door would not budge, it wouldn't let them out, and they couldn't get out, and they were terrified, petrified. They could not leave. They just said it was big and black and kept moving all around.
Mentally unstable TB patients were housed on the 5th floor of the Waverly Hills Hospital. Nurses here worked grueling 18-hour shifts with the sickest, most piteous patients. It was the wrong place for 2 thrill-seeking adventurers to hang around.
Having fun.
Me and a friend of mine were just going and wanting to hang out and see if we could get any action around this old place. And we ended up going up to the 5th floor, and we were just basically hanging out and chatting and talking, you know, nothing out of the ordinary. And we started hearing all these weird sounds, and the building started to get a little bit cooler. And coldness just kind of kept slipping in, and the wind was blowing through the walls, and we were both getting kind of jumpy, so we decided it was time to leave. Suddenly we heard this loud sound. It was like the sound of a chair being slammed to the ground. It was so loud, it seemed like it was in the same room with us. We were the only 2 in there. And we just sat and we listened, but we didn't hear anything else.
Get out.
And then suddenly, the next thing we heard, it was definitely directed toward us. It wasn't just some arbitrary sound. This was the sound of like a voice that was restricted, just gasping out, "Get out,
okay,
get out."
This isn't cool, let's go.
And after we heard that, we didn't want to hear anything else. So I started running, and I got out the door first. But my friend, the door slammed shut on his ankle, and he got caught and he couldn't get away. And I was just so scared, I just kept running. And I had to leave him behind, and he eventually got loose, and he was just hobbling, trying to catch up with me. We were just scared to death.
Two events dating back to the Sanitarium days make room 502 a particular hotspot for ghost activity. Both are bitter remnants of the building's tragic past. In 1928, the head nurse was found in room 502, hanging from a light fixture, a chair kicked to the floor as she took her last breath. Then, in 1932, another nurse who worked there jumped tragically to her death from the balcony that leads from room 502. Two women dead by their own hand, both dedicated to healing the sick and insane in room 502. Perhaps it was too much misery to witness, yet it seems they are forever doomed to stalk the place where they worked and died.
This is also the area when we give tours, this is where we stop and people can see these things in the hallway. This is where I actually got hit with a piece of cement during one of these tours. I was showing a young lady, she couldn't actually see this stuff, so I was trying to help her. And what you do is just basically drop your eyes and let your eyes just go out of focus and see everything at once. And as we're standing here talking, this just hunk of cement came flying through and just basically smacked me in the head. I got 6 stitches out of it.
But while you guys were standing there talking, there were a bunch of them swirling right behind where Keith was standing. So whatever it is, it's generally following us around. It'd stay ahead of us down this hallway. Then when you guys started walking back, it started following you back down this way.
And what you do is basically drop your eyes, and let your eyes just go out of focus and see everything.
We had a small figure, almost a childlike figure, standing in the doorway.
The temperature was dropping drastically until we turned on all the lights. And as soon as we turned on all the lights, temperature shot back up to ambient temperature. What we saw when we were talking about the small image was actually against this door. And when we catch the shadows, a lot of times they're catching through this windows room here. My phone is turned off. Trust me. I'll turn it off a third time. And that's things that happen up here. Things that happen with phones up here. If they go off in here, you answer them, a lot of times they will melt. They'll just burn up. My phone's been turned off since we entered the building. And as y'all heard, it just went off a minute ago. I turned it off again in the hallway, and it just rang again. So now it's off for the third time. So that's just part of this building, and it just got cold in here, Mark, didn't it?
Yeah, I feel the cold.
We dared each other to go in there. The first person to get scared and leave loses. We went up through the woods, and we walked through the main entrance and up and down the hallways.
A few months after their first visit, Beth Ann Hendricks and her friends came back to Waverly Hills to test their courage once more. The trip started out as a bit of a lark, but as they made their way through the vast labyrinth of gaping hallways, things got more and more weird. The girls sensed they were being followed by an unseen presence.
Then we heard this clicking sound and a sound of metal scraping against the floor or the wall, I'm not sure which one. And then we saw her. When I saw her, she was dressed in white and scrambling around on the floor. Her wrists were bleeding. At that point, I knew it couldn't be real.
Yeah, we're down to 42 degrees right now, right here. Right here in front of me.
It's freezing in here.
This is the room where we first got the most violent activity that we ever caught. As we were giving a tour in here one night, it was about 20 people in here. My back was to the wall and I was facing this way. And from the side over here, I got hit with a Mountain Dew bottle. So I'm thinking someone in here is just messing with me, you know, part of the tour. And as I'm looking over there, what was left of the fluorescent light fixture, which is these wires are actually a part of, that was here, decided to swing down and just basically rang my bell. Just hit me full force in the face. And as I'm standing here, I'm hearing people go, wow, cool, check it out. I'm hearing concrete sounds. And what it is the concrete off the floor is now sliding this way and hitting me in the wall over there. And before that section of the wall fell down, you could actually see where it hit the concrete so hard it took chunks out of the concrete. And of course everybody here's going, wow, cool. And I'm going, let's get out of here, you know, this hurts. And this was a hydro treatment room.
The batteries in here are fairly fresh and they just died, which is fairly common. One thing you do in ghost hunting, bring lots of batteries.
I would not stand in front of the door. I'd come all the way in. The door's level. What tends to happen in this room is this door will shut on its own.
I'm freezing.
I know it's dropping on me too.
Yeah, I'm real cold.
46. Well, again, this is conclusive with paranormal activity. I mean, we know it's an actual 52 degrees outside, and I can actually see my breath now in front of me.
In this room, they did several different operations or procedures. One was called an autopneumothorax, and what they would do is they would go in and manually collapse a lung. They would make an incision between a couple ribs, stick in a tube, and collapse a lung. What they believed was that if they gave the lung time to rest.
Again, we were just standing here talking, and as Renee was explaining what went on in this room, the door decided to shut on its own. I didn't see it. I had my back to it. I heard it. We all turned around.
I had my back to it, and there was no rush of air. There was no draft or anything.
Temperature also.
Yeah, the temperature was actually dropping at that point. When we hit it, it was like 44 degrees. And again, right now we're at 51, 50. So, you know, it's naturally going down, but it shouldn't have dropped that far down.
Well, the last time I was here, we definitely had a sense of being followed and watched everywhere we went. We saw a figure darting between the doors and looking around corners and peering through the windows. We were investigating in the operating room. I hadn't noticed anything there, so I went out into the hallway when I became aware of two men who apparently had been following us from room to room and floor to floor. One of them was the lab coat man, which I'd heard about, and another was another man who apparently had joined them as we came up the stairwell. Later on, I went downstairs and I was taking some time-lapse photos on the walkway out here by myself. While I was taking the photos, I heard a sound directly behind me that sounded like if someone had stepped on some broken plaster. And I turned around, and standing directly behind me was the lab coat man with his hands in his pockets and just watching me. The event scared the crap out of me, and because I was not prepared for that. And at that point, I went ahead and packed everything up and moved on back downstairs to where my friends were.
After several hours in the building, Keith Age and his team of paranormal investigators discover meaningful evidence of ghostly activity.
Hang on a second. We're going to see if we can capture it on this.
There was something really big right in front of us. It was right here.
We get these big black masses, and they'll come. It was huge.
Right in front of us. I mean, it's standing as close to us as you are right now.
Yeah. Well, that's why before we walked down here, that's why I asked if we turn the lights off for a second, because this entire hallway was just pitch black. We couldn't see anything down it. And usually you can just by the sheer natural light, ambient light that comes through the doorways and the windows.
Well, I just had the camera on standby, and I've been turning it on and off while we've been walking around, and for some reason it just shut itself off. I had to repower it.
Actually, we do have, not just us, but other people on tours, they'll have their hair pulled. Feels like sometimes you're standing there and they'll run their fingers right through your hair. If you have it in a ponytail, they'll pull your ponytail, touch your arm. Standing there, they'll breathe on you. It's different people on tours have experienced that along with us. We call one guy when we stand up and watch the shadow people on the 4th floor, the groper, because he has done things like grab women's rear ends and touching them and patting them.
My meter shut off. I just turned it on, I don't know, what, 2 minutes ago?
We were listening to Keith, and Lynn and I were standing together. It sounded like a moan, a man moaning, just one moan. Just like that.
The last and final time we went up here, we decided to take some photos and saw nothing out of the usual. I mean, you always hear a few noises, but I mean, we made a few noises walking around ourselves with all the ruins. I mean, the place isn't in very good condition, so you have to be really careful.
You ready? Sure.
2 weeks later, I got a phone call from my friend. And she was so urgent to see me. I got there and I was like, what do you need? What's so urgent? Is something wrong? She just stared at me and showed me a stack of photographs. On top was me and her glaring at the camera, but in the middle was a little girl. She said she saw her when we were walking around, but didn't want to say anything because she didn't think I saw her too. I told her I definitely didn't see anyone when we were walking around, but saw her in the picture. It makes me shudder just to think that someone was there following us.
There's one road here.
Why are you?
Who's chirping?
Where's your flashlight?
No, it's something called the drain room.
Your flashlight.
It just went crazy. It went all the way over to 10.
And then just in case anybody wants to know what else she's also holding, in case somebody says, well, it's a magnet in her hand or anything, that's just a sensor for another
It's a cell sensor.
meter, so it doesn't have a magnet or nothing in it, so there's nothing in there. She's held them all 3 all night long. This is the entrance to Waverly Hills that everyone likes to go to, and this is where everyone wants to try to get into. This is actually the body chute, or what everybody else calls it, the death tunnel. It's 485 feet straight down and straight up. This was actually built for supplies and other things to come up to the hospital from Dixie Highway instead of having to go all the way around the hills, just a straight shot up. When people died, they would actually put up here, there was an electric motor right here. There was a rail car system that runs on the pad on the right-hand side. It steps all the way down. They would actually have the bodies go all the way down to the rail cars.
Hold on a second, I got no audio.
Who's one?
These were new also.
Well, like I said,
Change these every time we go out.
my EMF meter died just as we went into 502. Brand new battery, just put it in.
This is the 3rd time today my battery belt has died, powering my 15-watt sun gun in the death tunnel.
And he's put a fresh battery in it.
It's a brand new, fresh battery. ×2.
You could try it with flashlights.
I had a feeling this would happen, and sure enough, it did.
Well, this was concrete in all the way to the hospital, so they couldn't see how many bodies were actually being put out every hour. I mean, our flashlights can't even hit the end of the tunnel. We just had several major power draining incidents, is what we call them. And your batteries on your one light, one of them went dead as you walked in. You changed it out. They just went out again while you were talking. We started going by mag lights, and as you kind of see, they're dimming out too. Was it your audio sensor? The batteries went out that, and you said they were brand new batteries. Again, this is kind of conclusive to paranormal activity. The major consensus is for an entity to appear or show itself or react to the environment, it has to have some type of energy to focus from and pull from. Well, nearest source is usually batteries, and they're usually the first thing to go. We've had things happening all night. EMF meters quit working, brand new batteries, lights, radios, a little bit of everything. Again, I'm happy with what we've caught tonight. Like I said earlier, this place can give you one hell of a show, or it can just be dead. We were lucky enough to capture some things going on we've seen, again, like the small shadow image that several members of the Louisville Ghost Hunters saw, the drastic temperature changes, the doors shutting in the OR. Also, you were able to capture it on your sound, where we heard doors closing around us when we were in the morgue area. And just the overall night has been a fairly good one. No, it hasn't been a terrific bang-up job, but we're happy with what we were able to capture and what we were able to let you guys come along and enjoy it with us. So we'll see you in a little bit.
The tragic history of disease and death at Waverly Hills Sanitarium has left a rich, ghostly legacy for the curious. If you should be walking alone in Miramichi's French Cove in New Brunswick, be forewarned, you may not be alone. You could be joined by the spirit of a headless nun who is said to haunt this area.
There was a gentleman out walking, enjoying this beautiful scenery that we are surrounded by here at French Fort Cove, and up ahead on the path he could see someone walking towards him in the sort of robe that a priest or nun would wear. And we thought it was a nun, but he wasn't quite sure because, well, the body was missing a head. And then it spoke. It was a woman's voice. She had asked him to help her find her missing head. Now, when he started to back away in fear, the woman reached out and offered him gold if he would help her. The man turned and fled in sheer terror. Back safely in his hotel room, the man poured himself a calming refreshment to help him ease the terror he had just been through, so to speak, when out of nowhere and suddenly an unwanted visitor arrived. Now, the nun, apparently thinking this would be the man to help her locate her head, offered him a sum of money again in his room. But again, the man wanted nothing to do with this, and he fled. No questions asked, and didn't even bother to pack. He's never been seen nor heard from again.
In 1756, the French were driven out of Nova Scotia by the British. Most went to Quebec, but a handful of Acadians, as they were known, ended up in Miramichi in northern New Brunswick. Miramichi is a native word. It means land of the bad people. Given the history of this place, it's an appropriate name.
The Headless Nun is one of Miramichi's better-known ghosts and a central part of the folklore that surrounds the tormented past of French Fort Cove.
Life at French Fort Cove was hard. The settlers lived in fear of the British and struggled to grow enough food to eat. The community was also plagued with leprosy, and in an effort to contain its spread, lepers were exiled to nearby Sheldrake Island. This history of death and disease is fertile ground for ghost stories, and one of the most intriguing involves the lepers and a headless nun. Sister Marie Canoe was believed to have been of noble birth. In the tradition of the time, as the youngest daughter, she was destined to a life of religious servitude. She entered the convent and was assigned to missionary service.
Sister Marie obtained passage to Quebec in 1750, but eventually ended up here in Miramichi, where she became so trusted and beloved by the community that she became keeper of their biggest secret. Fearing another attack from the British, the Acadian women gathered all their valuables and placed them in a chest to be buried for safekeeping. Sister Marie and two older women were entrusted with hiding the chest. Soon afterwards, the older women died, and Sister Marie was the only one who knew the secret hiding place.
As Sister Marie Canoe was making her way home after assisting a difficult childbirth, she was attacked near Crow Brook Bridge. Her attackers were two lepers who had escaped from Sheldrake Island and wanted money to get out of New Brunswick. They demanded to know where the treasure was, and when Sister Marie refused to say, they callously slashed her throat. The cut was made with such force that her head was severed completely. It was thrown into the water and washed out to sea.
The next morning, her body was found and shipped to France for proper burial, but her head has never been found. Since Sister Marie's violent and disturbing murder, her ghost continues to haunt French Fort Cove, asking all visitors it encounters for help in finding her head so that it can be sent to France and buried with the rest of her remains. She just wants to finally rest in peace. Generally, the ghost of Sister Marie is not aggressive nor life-threatening. She's just looking for someone to help her find her head, and she's willing to pay for that assistance. But I'd pity the person who finds her buried treasure or tries to take the money and run. He'd better be able to run very far and very fast.
More than a century later, a treasure hunter, after much research, began digging where he had determined the chest was buried. Just as his shovel hit pay dirt, he was pushed forcefully by a phantom figure. Dazed and confused, the man tried to gather himself and stand. He looked up to see the headless body of Sister Marie hovering over him menacingly. He turned and ran and never looked back. Back in his hotel room, he thought he was safe, but it seems Sister Marie could not allow her secret to leave with him. The next morning, the treasure hunter was found dead in his room. The official cause of death? Heart attack. But locals know he died of fear, of the wrath of Sister Marie and Canoe.
Another time in the early 1920s, a gentleman, Edmund Robichaud, responsible for delivering the mail to the area, was coming through the cove on horseback. As he approached the bridge over Crow Brook, his horse stopped, refusing to enter. The man tried again and again, but the horse would not go one step closer. It would not enter the bridge. The next day, as they proceeded, he looked about closely, curious as to what had spooked his horse. There, at the exit from the bridge, in the dust, 2 footprints, but no trail leading to or from the spot. Just 2 solitary prints. Right then, he knew what had frightened his horse, the headless nun. She must have been waiting for them at the other side.
The ghost of Sister Marie has left her mark in other ways, too. A group of tourists were crossing Crow Brook Bridge when the man felt something tap him on the back of the head. He turned to see the headless ghost of Sister Marie behind him. The next day, the spot at the back of his head where he'd felt the tap was marked by 3 finger-shaped patches of white hair. After that, the man is reported to have developed a nervous habit of always looking over his shoulder, until, eventually, he went mad.
To this day, the whereabouts of the Acadian woman's treasure remain a mystery, and those who go in search of it are duly warned.
Helen Peters was jogging along Burlington Bay early one morning. As she stopped to cool down, she noticed a patch of fog over the water. It seemed to be moving into shore. As the eerie white mist drifted closer, she could make out an old ship emerging from the fog. Suddenly, there was a blood-curdling scream. Fearing someone was in trouble, she ran towards the sound. The screaming escalated, seeming to come from all directions. Then, just as suddenly, the mist cleared, and there was no ship in sight. The screaming abruptly stopped, and she was alone on the empty shore.
Once a lively port, Burlington Bay Harbor is now a virtual no man's land. However, passers-by have said they've heard the agonizing scream of a man echoing across the waters. And on stormy nights, a ship can be seen floating in the fog. This apparition is believed to be the cargo ship where Jem Horner met his doom in 1827.
Jem Horner and two mates were unloading a shipload of quarry rocks onto the pier. Jem slipped and lost his footing, wedging his leg into a small crevice between the dock and the boat. Before he could get his injured leg out, the boat rolled into the dock and crushed his leg. His screams of agony could be heard for miles. His leg was horribly mangled, and he was crying in pain. Jem's shipmates were a callous pair, with no fondness for Jem Horner. Hoping to claim his share of the wages, they pulled him away from the boat and left him to die at the back door of a nearby tavern. The tavern owner heard Jem's screams, dragged the injured man inside, and called a doctor. When the doctor arrived, Jem was in extreme pain. He had lost a lot of blood and was losing life. The leg was so mangled, it couldn't be saved. The doctor made a grim decision to amputate immediately. The operation would have to be performed right there in the back room of the tavern. It was a brutal procedure with no anesthesia and the most basic of tools. But despite the doctor's best efforts, Jem had already lost too much blood and did not survive the operation. The doctor gave the tavern owner Jem's amputated leg with instructions to bury it, but the tavern owner didn't think it was right to bury the man without his leg, so he put it in a keg of whiskey to preserve it until the funeral. In a gruesome turn of events, the very same shipmates who had left Jem to die outside the tavern came upon the keg and stole it. They stayed up all night drinking whiskey. It wasn't until 2 days later, when an inquest was called, that they discovered Jem's severed leg had been in the keg they were drinking from. Patrick Cross and his team from Burlington Ghost and Haunting Researchers have been documenting the Jem Horner ghost for a number of years.
Okay, we're here at the inlet, the actual location, the original Burlington Bay, and this is where we believe Jem Horner's ghost really is, including many people hearing his deathly screams that still resonate in the air today. Right on the shoreline here where all the rocks are, this is the best spot with a perfect view where the actual boat came in and where you can actually get the best sighting and possibly sounds and the ghost sounds of Jem Horner himself that appear right in this area. In order to find ghost activity, usually this is a standard compass and it would pick up electromagnetic field energy. There it goes. It was in one of the areas that's more active. There it goes. Yeah, there it goes. This is a digital thermometer, meaning that you can actually, the temperature go up and down within plus and minus 1 degree. If the temperature drops in a matter of seconds, you will actually see that. Although we're outdoors, there is a bit of a cold spot here, meaning it's colder than it is on this side here. So I do feel a lot of cold air around Michelle, especially. As you notice, the compass is going crazy right now. The temperature is dropping drastically. So this would be a typical good example. Now, why is there EMF or energy here? Because this is all rock and wood, so it shouldn't be anything electrical whatsoever. So ghosts are made up of electrons, positive and negative electrons, and there is a lot of activity here. And now, it's probably still dropping. It's still dropping over here. So it was constant here, it's still dropping. Look at that, look at that. It's really going now. A lot of activity over here. That's bizarre.
Wow.
And of course, temperature's still dropping. I'm feeling a lot of cold air right here. Most of the times you won't get this because the compass will stay due north. The only way this can happen is if there is a lot of ghost activity around us. And it's now dropped to 60.4. When I go back over here, it goes back up again. It starts going back. So there is a lot of the cold air, cold presence right in this spot here, which is the area probably where Jim was working or had died.
Did you hear that?
I heard that.
That was a little thump.
Well, that shouldn't be there, because there's nothing there.
I know.
Why there? We just. That sounded like a boat, a thumping of a boat.
Exactly, yeah.
We just heard that.
Bang.
Yeah, it was like a boat banging against the shore.
Yeah.
And that's typical what you'd hear: boats crashing or the screams.
Yeah.
Okay, as we were emerging out from the other side, there was a bit of ghost energy in there, and when we investigated this previous, by the actual shores and the rocks, we found other ghost energy as well as we got ghost ectoplasm and mist.
Ooh, that makes it good. Really? Want to
Right
try?
here. Okay, try there. It is. Putting it right in here.
Let's try it.
Yeah, it's really freezing right here. Right here, Jim. You're right. It's freezing.
But it's
It is. It's really cold as opposed to over there. It's nice and warm. It's freezing right here. Yeah.
could be moving around as well.
Well, you were like you said, you're getting an orb. Look here, Michelle. Feel this. Holy cow.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
Jeez, amazing.
Oh man, it's a really large amount.
Strange as that.
It's gone. It's gone again. There it is. It's like warm. See?
It's moving up.
Yeah. That's just unreal.
I think Jem is very curious as to what we're all doing out here tonight, because we're feeling him very strong and getting a lot of pockets of energy. There he goes.
It's like we're being observed by what we're observing. It's like the hunter is now being the hunted. It's the ghosts are now watching us. We're trying to look for ghosts, but yet they're watching us.
It's little pockets, but it's concentrated energy. It's just freezing right here. Over here, it's gone, and it's right around mostly Michelle and Jim right now. When we first came down here, we were getting very little active energy, and now we've attracted, and they're excited. Now they're all over the place over here because we're open to it. We're calling on it, and it seems to be here.
I really got the impression that we were being watched the entire time. I know we talked about that a little bit tonight, but I really felt as though we were not the ones really doing the investigating, that we had ghosts, basically investigating us. They were very curious as to what we were doing, and of course I was really fascinated by the large bang that we heard tonight, because when we rushed out to the lake, there was literally nothing there, and that was pretty impressive.
Nearly 170 years later, there have been numerous sightings of a ghost ship in the harbor and reports of Jem Horner's screams heard across the bay. They hope to find new evidence for their file on Jem Horner's ghost. If you happen to come down to Burlington Bay, take a moment to listen for Jem Horner's screams. You may even see a phantom ship or see Jem Horner's ghost hobbling along the rocky shore.